Han Li stepped out of the pavilion and lifted his gaze to the river of light flowing across the heavens, a vast stream seemingly woven from countless stars. As he watched, the points of starlight within it began to drift and surge, streaking through the river like showers of falling stars. A strange feeling stirred in his heart. From that luminous river, he sensed waves of time law fluctuations pulsing outward. Sweeping his gaze around, Han Li realized that everything beneath those fluctuations had fallen into absolute stillness. Curiosity sparked within him. He formed a hand seal and activated the Great Five Elemental Illusion mantra. One after another, his five-time attribute law treasures appeared at his side, then shot upward into the river of light. The time law treasures hidden within them flew free and merged directly into the starry river. In an instant, the river erupted with dazzling golden brilliance. Radiance poured down like a heavenly cascade, flooding the entire flower branch domain and draping all of space in rippling time law power. Han Li's heart lurched. He feared that all of his time law threads had vanished. With a sweep of his sleeve, he unleashed an enormous time spirit domain that enveloped the flower branch domain, attempting to recall his time law threads through it. But none responded. At the same moment, the spirit domain took form. Countless translucent Dao runes streamed out from the five-time attribute law treasures, merging into the space within the domain. Powerful fluctuations surged as the mantra treasured axis rose behind him, transforming into a perfect full moon suspended in the sky. Golden light spilled from the moon, illuminating the spirit domain as brightly as a blazing summer sun, yet carrying no warmth. Below, the illusory dawn hourglass descended and dissolved into a vast sea of golden sand that spread throughout the domain. Han Li felt an indescribable sensation well up within him. Something about his time attribute law treasures had clearly changed after his breakthrough. Though the mantra treasured axis remained hazy, flecks of golden light gathered into it from all directions, its connection to the spirit domain deepening as if both were on the verge of becoming one. Could it be? Is my spirit domain advancing to the creation tier? Shock flickered across his face, but the transformations continued. The clear time vial suddenly fell into the golden sands, its radiant liquid pouring out. Instead of being absorbed, it pooled together, swiftly forming a shimmering golden river that reshaped the terrain, raising mountains and carving valleys. Soon after, the Eastern Vicissitudes divine tree descended as well, transforming into vast, flourishing forests that spread endlessly. Like the moon above, these manifestations began to slowly merge with the spirit domain itself. Understanding dawned on Han Li. He rose into the air and sat cross-legged, suspended in midair, then pushed the Great Five Elemental Illusion mantra to its limits. Time law power and immortal spiritual power surged from him, filling the entire domain. The fusion between his time attribute law treasures and the spirit domain accelerated, yet remained painfully slow. At this pace, he had no idea how long the process would take. Worse still, his immortal origin stones could only sustain the celestial time array for a century. 10,000 years within the array. 2,000 years had already been spent on his breakthrough, leaving him with only 8,000 years. Expecting to fully stabilize a creation tier spirit domain in that time was nothing but a fantasy. There's not enough time to do everything at once. I'll have to focus on one first. Having made his choice, Han Li swept his sleeve toward the lush forest formed by the Eastern Vicissitudes divine tree. Instantly, all the time law power and immortal spiritual power converged upon it. The fusion of the other four treasures slowed sharply, while the divine tree's integration sped up dramatically. It's working. He had deliberately chosen the Eastern Vicissitudes divine tree rather than the mantra treasured axis, despite his familiarity with the latter, lacking confidence in forcing that outcome first. Time flowed on as Han Li continued pouring his power into the domain. Before he knew it, another 2,000 years had passed, merely 20 years in the outside world. 20 years earlier, Xiaobai had already sensed Han Li's successful breakthrough, and growing unease gnawed at him as Han Li remained in seclusion. He should have emerged by now. What's taking so long? Could something have gone wrong? No, that's impossible. Master must be doing something else. But time is running out. Xiaobai paced restlessly, voicing his worries to the Essence Fire Raven. Through their connection, he knew Hanli was unharmed, yet the looming deadline of 200 years weighed heavily on him. Though tempted many times to enter the Flower Branch domain, he restrained himself, fearing disruption. Within the domain, Hanli gazed down at the space below, where the Golden Forest had taken on a fully realized form. His spirit domain had reached the creation tier, and it had only taken 2,000 years. Satisfaction rose within him. For others, stabilizing a creation tier spirit domain could require tens or even hundreds of thousands of years. Hanli believed his speed stemmed from two reasons: the supreme profundity of his cultivation art, and the fact that his 5-time attribute law treasures embodied the powers of the 5 elements. All things were born from the 5 elements. In matters of creation, such powers possessed an inherent advantage. Surveying the remaining manifestations, Hanli murmured, "There's no time for the rest. You'll have to wait until later." Just as he prepared to withdraw his spirit domain, an unusual sound echoed through the Flower Branch domain. A streak of azure light shot up from the spirit medicine garden, sped toward him, and plunged into the Golden Forest. Hanli focused his gaze. It was a strange tree. The twin birth tree? Indeed, it was the twin birth tree he had obtained from the ruins of the true mantra sect. Though it had once grown painfully slowly, this one was already fully mature. The moment it entered the forest, it took root. Azure light spread outward, forming an azure woodland that overlapped with the Golden Forest, the two seemingly on the verge of merging. A physical object is fusing with my spirit domain? Isn't that something that only happens at the oneness tier? A oneness tier spirit domain surpassed creation and spirit form tiers, able to integrate physical entities imbued with the same laws, granting the domain true substance. Within such a domain, the cultivator stood as one with the heavens themselves, ruling like a supreme sovereign and possessing near invincibility against all foes. Hanli remained quietly within the Flower Branch domain, patiently awaiting the complete fusion of the twin birth tree with his Eastern Vicissitudes divine tree. At that very moment, however, the celestial time array suddenly convulsed, releasing a violent tremor as its radiance surged outward, flooding the entire domain and overpowering even his spirit domain's glow. Hanli's brows knit together at once. Have the immortal origin stones already been depleted? Just then, a pillar of dazzling golden light erupted from the heart of the array and shot straight toward him. Encased within it was none other than the heavenly wheel sundial. Fearing that it might disrupt the ongoing evolution of his spirit domain, Hanli reached out to seize it mid-flight. Yet the sundial abruptly changed course, slipping past his grasp and soaring toward the mantra. Treasured axis, suspended high above, a thunderous boom echoed through the domain as the heavenly wheel sundial detonated upon contact with the mantra treasured axis. Strangely, only its physical shell was destroyed. The metal attribute time law powers within burst forth as golden radiance, merging seamlessly into the mantra treasured axis. Wrapped in that light, the axis grew increasingly solid, its brilliance intensifying with every breath. After witnessing the twin birth tree's fusion, Hanli had braced himself for such an outcome, yet joy still surged through his heart. Never had he imagined that this seclusion would yield such staggering rewards. Still, confusion quickly followed. The twin birth tree's fusion had relied upon the Eastern Vicissitudes divine tree reaching the creation tier, but the mantra treasured axis had not yet crossed that threshold. How, then, could it fuse with the heavenly wheel sundial? Had his spirit domain somehow skipped the creation tier entirely? As these thoughts arose, he sensed faint ripples spreading across his spirit domain. A dull thud resounded, and the mantra treasured axis shook violently, releasing a terrifying suction force. Hanli hastily lifted his hand, attempting to halt the fusion. Yet the process had already reached a critical point. Interfering now would surely inflict grave damage upon both treasures. Even so, he had no choice. The fusion demanded an immense supply of time law power, far beyond what the mantra treasured axis could currently sustain. Worse still, all the time law power within his body had already been exhausted during the twin birth tree's fusion. His greatest fear was that the mantra treasured axis would forcibly draw upon his time spirit domain instead. As if responding to his thoughts, the suction intensified. His spirit domain shuddered violently as streaks of golden light peeled away from it and rushed toward the mantra-treasured axis. Han Li thrust both hands upward, forming colossal projections that clawed toward the axis. Space itself rippled under the strain, compressing inward in an attempt to sever its link to the spirit domain. But the effort was futile. Before the hand projections could close in, they were repelled by blazing rays of golden light imbued with pure, overwhelming time law power. Power even Han Li could not suppress. Helplessly, he watched as his spirit domain began to crumble, piece by piece. He refused to surrender. At his command, the Eastern Vicissitudes' divine tree below swayed violently, releasing a torrent of time law power that surged skyward. Golden sand rose from the earth, the winding river ascended into the heavens, and a blazing meteor shower rained down from above. In an instant, chaos engulfed the spirit domain as these four forces collided with the full moon formed by the mantra. Treasured Axis. A deafening explosion rang out, golden light erupting in waves that swept through the entire domain. Time law fluctuations also burst forth from the celestial time array, yet instead of clashing, the two forces fused together, enveloping the domain in a strange, all-encompassing power. Moments later, the spirit domain rapidly contracted, shrinking until it covered only a few hundred feet around Han Li. Beyond its boundary, everything had fallen still. The forest no longer swayed, the mist ceased to rise, and even the wind seemed frozen in place. Above him, the suction from the mantra-treasured axis and the heavenly wheel sundial faded away, their fusion continuing in a far calmer, steadier fashion. Han Li was utterly baffled. Attempting to withdraw his spirit domain, he formed a hand seal, only to find it completely unresponsive. Alarm flashed across his face as he leapt into the air and tried to escape the flower branch domain. Yet he found himself trapped within his own spirit domain. This is truly troublesome. Clearly, the fusion had triggered a transformation within both the celestial time array and his spirit domain, leaving him imprisoned. Steadying his mind, Han Li quickly devised a solution. Since his entrapment stemmed from losing control over the spirit domain, regaining control should free him. Yet, the path ahead was far from easy. The mantra-treasured axis was evolving toward the oneness tier, and restoring the spirit domain hinged upon completing that process. The problem lay in his lack of sufficient time law power. Fortunately, the space had stabilized for the moment. If he continued cultivating the Great Five Elemental Illusion mantra to amass more time law power, he would eventually succeed. Even so, a bitter smile appeared on his face. If the celestial time array still functioned normally, he had only 6,000 years remaining. Yet he could remain trapped here for tens of thousands. With no alternatives left, Han Li sat down cross-legged and resumed cultivation. Several thousand years passed in the blink of an eye. Time law power now saturated his spirit domain, yet Han Li gazed up at the golden moon overhead with deep confusion. Even the mantra-treasured axis has reached the oneness tier, so why? The fusion between the heavenly wheel sundial and the mantra-treasured axis was complete, yet he remained unable to leave. Is it still insufficient? Several more millennia slipped away. By now, the immortal origin stones within the celestial time array should have long since been exhausted, and the mantra-treasured axis had fully entered the oneness tier. By all logic, the spirit domain should have returned to normal. Yet Han Li was still confined within it. During these long years of cultivation, profound changes had taken shape. Solid mountain outlines had emerged across the land, not as lush as the forest above them, but unmistakably having reached the creation tier. Only the river of time remained hollow and illusory, clearly yet to attain that same realm. Why? Han Li roared, leaping into the air and striking his own spirit domain. A colossal golden fist projection smashed into the barrier with an earth-shaking boom. Yet the golden light merely rippled briefly before settling once more. After venting his anger, his agitation eased somewhat. He sat back down, expression resolute. There was no value in despair. He would continue cultivating. Perhaps once all of my other time attribute law treasures reach the creation tier, I will finally be freed. Han Li thought silently. Over 90,000 years passed like drifting clouds. Within the flower branch domain, all remained frozen and unchanged, as though time itself had been pinned in place. Han Li sat unmoving inside his spirit domain, his robes disheveled and his aura worn thin, bearing the marks of prolonged seclusion. The predicament he faced had far exceeded his expectations. As early as 20,000 years prior, all of his time attribute law treasures had already advanced to the creation tier, dragging his entire spirit domain up with them. Among these treasures, the mantra treasured axis and the Eastern vicissitudes divine tree had even transcended further, stepping into the oneness tier. This imbalance was extraordinarily difficult to resolve, leaving Han Li confined within his own spirit domain, unable to advance or retreat. This is the moment. Han Li slowly lifted his head and flicked his sleeve. The Eon divine lamp flew forth, passing through the mantra treasured axis and ascending to the apex of the spirit domain. Above, countless stellar lights formed from the time-severing torch dotted the heavens. As the lamp rose, those stars surged toward it, fusing into a single blazing golden fireball that plunged straight into the lamp. Radiance erupted as runes ignited across its surface, peeling away one after another and dissolving into the spirit domain. Soon after, the lamp itself became hazy and formless, shattering into innumerable sparks that vanished without a trace. Han Li gazed upward. A solitary full moon hung amid a sea of stars, majestic and serene beyond words. He began circulating the great five elemental illusion mantra with utmost focus, observing every subtle shift within the spirit domain. Vitality flourished under the emerald glow of the Eastern vicissitudes divine tree forest. Yet the river of time still lacked substance, appearing like a phantom drifting above the mountains below. Han Li knew that only by acquiring suitable water and earth attribute time law treasures and refining them into the domain could true balance be achieved, allowing the spirit domain to reach the oneness tier. Let me see how much longer you can hold me. Steel resolve flashed across his face as he raised both hands skyward. The full moon burst forth with resplendent golden light, while countless vines and branches surged from the depths of the Eastern vicissitudes divine tree forest. Yet the golden radiance could not escape the spirit domain, and the roots of the twin birth tree fared no better. The moment they reached beyond the domain into the outer earth, they withered into nothingness. Han Li had long since grown used to this failure. He had attempted it many times, hoping to injure the celestial time array by extending the domain's power outward. Only attacks infused with overwhelming time law could breach the domain's confines. But all of his time attribute treasures had already fused with it. Thus, only the spirit domain itself could be wielded as a weapon. However, neither the mantra treasured axis nor the Eastern vicissitudes divine tree excelled at offense. That was why Han Li had painstakingly elevated the time-severing torch to the creation tier and merged the Eon divine lamp into it. At his command, countless sparks of fiery starlight rained down from the heavens, transforming mid-descent into massive fireballs that slammed downward with terrifying force. A thunderous roar shook the spirit domain as chaos erupted. The mountain range, formed from illusory dawn sand, was obliterated in an instant, reduced to a vast expanse of golden grit. Shockwaves ravaged the ground beneath, surging all the way to the bamboo pavilion. The array core there cracked apart, instantly halting the celestial time array. At the same moment, a symbol of the heavenly wheel sundial on the mantra treasured axis dimmed, and its time law power rapidly receded. The spirit domain swiftly shrank back to its original bounds, covering only the flower branch domain once more. Han Li was free at last. Joy surged through him, tempered by regret. Had he not been overly ambitious and forced the spirit domain toward the creation tier, he would never have been trapped for so long. By now, Xiaobai should have long since returned to the primordial land, and the Reincarnation Palace's campaign against the Nine Origins Temple was surely ancient history. But regrets were useless. Han Li withdrew his spirit domain and dismantled the celestial time array. At the bamboo pavilion, he bent down and retrieved an immortal origin stone from the shattered core. How is this possible? To his astonishment, the stone still glimmered faintly, retaining traces of immortal spiritual power. At that moment, Xiaobai burst into the pavilion. Upon seeing Han Li, it immediately complained, "Master, what were you doing in here? I came to check on you, but the entrance was completely sealed." Then it paused, staring at Han Li's haggard appearance in confusion. "You didn't return to the primordial land?" Han Li asked, stunned. Why would I? What happened to you, master? Xiaobai replied warily. Suspecting cultivation backlash, Han Li briefly recounted his experiences in seclusion. So first 2,000 years, then another 2,000, then over 90,000? That's more than 100,000 years! That's impossible, Xiaobai exclaimed. How much time passed outside? Han Li asked. Only 50 years. Han Li froze in disbelief, his expression convincing Xiaobai even further that something was wrong. Then Xiaobai sensed his aura and shouted in delight, Master, you've reached the great encompassment stage. Han Li came back to himself and murmured, No wonder the immortal origin stones still had power. What are you saying? I'm totally lost, Xiaobai groaned. The celestial time array originally accelerated time by 100-fold. Those first 4,000 years only amounted to 40 years outside, Han Li explained. But once the heavenly wheel sundial began merging with my mantra-treasured axis, the acceleration surged to nearly 10,000-fold. The final 100,000 years inside were merely 10 years outside. Xiaobai barely grasped the details, but one fact stood clear. Han Li had cultivated for 100,000 years within a single decade. That's unbelievable, it exclaimed. I was fortunate, but I nearly remained trapped forever, Han Li replied, a trace of lingering fear in his eyes. All that matters is the result, Xiaobai said cheerfully, and Han Li nodded. If such conditions could be recreated, the benefits would be immeasurable. Where is the essence fire, child? Han Li asked. Still outside keeping watch. I came in when I sensed the restriction lift, Xiaobai answered. I've caused you both concern, Han Li sighed. How does it feel to reach great encompassment? Xiaobai asked eagerly. My foundation still needs consolidation. Since we have time, I'll remain here a while longer, Han Li said. Xiaobai agreed, and departed to inform the Essence Fire child. Once alone, Han Li expanded his spirit domain again to envelop the flower branch domain, summoning all manifestations of his time attribute treasures. Walking through the domain, he bent heaven and earth with a mere thought. After further familiarization, confidence slowly grew within him. Confidence that his chances of rescuing Jintong had greatly improved. A decade slipped by, like flowing water. Within the greater Golden Origin immortal region stood Gilded City, located in the northwest and counted among the region's greatest cities, rivaling 9 Origin City, Golden Origin City, and 100 Creation City. Unlike those cities, which were firmly controlled by towering superpowers, Gilded City belonged to none. Because of this freedom, it became a haven for cultivators weary of the 9 Origins Temple, the Golden Origin Immortal Palace, and 100 Creations Mountain. These independents gathered under the banner of the Sun-Moon Alliance. Though its peak strength still lagged behind the true giants, the alliance treated minor factions and wandering cultivators kindly, drawing more and more forces into its fold and steadily increasing its influence. Inside a private booth of a luxurious 9-story restaurant, 3 figures sat drinking wine: Han Li, Weeping Soul, and Xiaobai, all carefully disguised. Though the reincarnation mission had yet to begin, Han Li had come early to handle other matters. Now at the great encompassment stage, his bearing was far steadier than before. More gratifying still, Weeping Soul had finally awakened and also advanced to great encompassment. I never expected a place like this to exist in the greater Golden Origin immortal region, Xiaobai said cheerfully, draining cup after cup. Don't lower your guard, Han Li cautioned. Even here, spies from the 9 Origins Temple and Golden Origin Immortal Palace are inevitable. With Big Sister Weeping Soul around, what is there to fear? Xiaobai laughed. No hostility can hide from her. Han Li smiled faintly toward Weeping Soul. Her soul-related law powers had grown formidable, and her sensitivity to malice was so sharp that even Han Li himself had been unable to conceal it during testing, unless he cloaked himself entirely in time law power, which would only invite suspicion. Still, Weeping Soul warned calmly that cultivators with similar laws could evade detection through special techniques. Han Li acknowledged the risk but remained confident, and Xiaobai voiced his wholehearted trust. As Han Li gazed out the window, concern flickered in his eyes. Despite probing many channels, the 9 Origins Temple's tightened secrecy amid regional turmoil had yielded him nothing about Jintong. There's still plenty of time before the Bodhi banquet, Xiaobai reassured him. Boss will be fine. Just then, A deep gong resounded through the city. Hanli's eyes brightened as he looked toward its source. A colossal structure stretching nearly 10 kilometers, built from sky blue material flecked with starlight. Jade Qilin statues flanked the entrance, guarded by blue armored body cultivators whose equipment radiated the light of graded immortal treasures. Above hung a plaque reading, Sun Moon Pavilion, its characters brimming with overwhelming aura. Streams of light descended from all directions as cultivators gathered, many at high zenith stage or above, buzzing with excitement over the once in 10,000 years myriad treasure festival. The auction is starting, Hanli said, rising. Xiaobai leapt up eagerly, but Hanli stopped him, warning that his ink-eyed Pixiu bloodline might still be exposed. With a sweep of his sleeve, golden light flashed, and Xiaobai was sent into the flower branch domain before he could protest. Hanli and Weeping Soul departed together. Attending this auction was one of Hanli's primary reasons for coming. During each Myriad Treasure Festival, initiated by 100 Creations Mountain, all major trading houses competed fiercely. With the Sun-Moon Alliance rising rapidly, its rivalry with 100 Creations Mountain had grown intense, and the treasures presented were always the finest within the immense Greater Golden Origin Immortal region. Though Hanli had once hoped to acquire a crucial time attribute law material here, he had already obtained it elsewhere. Even so, with his impending venture into the Nine Origins Temple and Weeping Soul still lacking a suitable immortal treasure, this auction remained invaluable. He avoided the main event at 100 Creations Mountain due to its ties with the Heavenly Court, choosing Sun Moon Pavilion instead. Inside, Hanli and Weeping Soul suppressed their cultivation to late high zenith stage, low enough to stay discreet, yet not so low as to invite disdain. A blue-browed golden immortal woman named Lan Mei greeted them warmly and offered to guide them to VIP seating. When Hanli asked about the auction list, she readily produced jade slips. Surprised, he remarked that such information was usually kept secret. Our alliance leader believes sincerity is the foundation of commerce, Lan Mei replied with pride. There is no need for tricks. Hanli gave a faint nod. That is indeed admirable, he said, then sent his spiritual sense into the jade slip. Instantly, an immense catalog unfolded before his mind, over 10,000 auction items, each marked with its starting price. The sequence of the auction was not listed, but that omission was deliberate. Too much clarity would strip away the suspense. With his formidable spiritual sense, Hanli swiftly memorized the contents, quietly sorting out the items that truly interested him. May I ask where you two seniors hail from, and what you plan to purchase? Lan Mei asked with a curious smile. Are you perhaps preparing for breakthroughs into the Great Encompassment stage? We wander the immortal realms without a fixed abode, Hanli replied calmly. As for purchases, nothing in particular. We will simply see what fate presents. Lan Mei did not press further. Smiling brightly, she said, Sun Moon Pavilion has placed great importance on this auction. We have prepared many rare treasures to meet all kinds of needs. Hanli nodded and asked several more questions regarding the auction proceedings, all of which Lan Mei answered smoothly and clearly. Nearby, Weeping Soul grew increasingly dissatisfied as she watched Hanli converse so naturally with Lan Mei. She pursed her lips and turned away, silently sulking. Before long, they were escorted into a private booth. The room was modest, only 20 or so feet across, furnished with a long bench and a white stone table upon which rested spirit tea and bowls of immortal fruit. The decor was sparse yet immaculate, and a gentle fragrance lingered in the air, calming the spirit. All four walls were sealed, save for a single window overlooking a colossal plaza stretching more than 10 kilometers. Endless rows of seats filled the space below, most already occupied. Numerous VIP booths hovered above the plaza, suspended in midair alongside theirs. Hanli turned to Lan Mei. That will be all. If you need anything, just ring this bell, she said, placing a small bell on the table before departing. Once she left, Hanli waved his sleeve, erecting an azure light barrier around the room. He then glanced at Weeping Soul. Why so quiet all of a sudden? You seem to be enjoying yourself quite a bit, she replied stiffly. A useless third wheel like me should know when to stay silent. Hanli laughed softly. I was only asking about the auction. Her expression eased somewhat, though her displeasure had not fully faded. There's no time for this, Hanli said. The auction is about to begin. Did anything in the jade slip catch your eye? Weeping Soul hesitated, then pointed out two immortal treasures. These, but their starting prices are extremely high. Hanli examined them briefly. They suit you perfectly. Don't worry about the cost. He still possessed roughly 50 million immortal origin stones after powering the celestial time array. These items would be expensive, but the law powers they contained were niche, meaning competition would likely be limited. Having reached the great encompassment stage, he no longer required accelerated cultivation time, so these resources could be spent freely. Thank you, Master, Weeping Soul exclaimed, delight lighting her face. At that moment, a message of intent reached Hanli from the Essence Firechild within the Flower Branch domain, requesting fire attribute materials to replenish itself. Hanli promptly agreed. Several suitable materials were listed in the auction, and their prices were modest. Xiaobai, meanwhile, clamored noisily, demanding to be let out. Not for treasures, but simply to watch the spectacle. Helplessly, Hanli projected the scene outside into the Flower Branch domain. Just then, 3 resounding gong strikes echoed through the plaza, signaling the start of the auction. A rotund elderly man with a broad face and prominent ears appeared on the platform in a flash of red light. Though unassuming, he was a mid-great encompassment cultivator, more than qualified to host the event. Today marks the opening of the Golden Origin Immortal Region's Myriad Treasure Festival, he announced calmly. Welcome to Sun Moon Pavilion. May you all depart with great gains. Now, let us begin. Armored guards carried forth a jade box. Inside lay a yellow crystal the size of a millstone, radiating dense rays of golden light. Vast earth law fluctuations rippled outward, and the gravity around the platform surged thousands of times heavier, forcing the guards to strain under its weight. This is an Earth Emperor crystal from the vast Earth Immortal region, the auctioneer said evenly. It formed deep underground, absorbing Earth essence for countless years. It is sufficient to refine a 4th-tier Earth attribute immortal treasure. Starting price, 5 million immortal origin stones, minimum increment, 100,000. Excited murmurs erupted across the plaza. Hanli's eyes flickered. Seeing the item in person far surpassed the impression given by the jade slip. Earth Emperor crystals were peerless Earth attribute materials, on par with heavenly Vajra diamonds of the metal path, and coveted by all who cultivated Earth law powers. Moreover, this crystal could serve as the foundation for a 4th-tier immortal treasure. While 5th-tier immortal treasures were attainable with effort, 4th-tier ones were another matter entirely. Their refinement demanded extreme materials and skill, and was said to invite a mysterious treasure tribulation. Though separated by only 1 tier, the gap in power was vast, rendering 4th-tier treasures exceedingly rare, even among true immortals. It was fitting that such a treasure opened the Myriad Treasure Festival. Hanli had no need for it, but the bidding was fierce. The price soared past 10 million in moments, finally settling at 12 million immortal origin stones in the hands of a VIP cultivator. The next item is a 5th-tier fire Dao pill. Treasures continued to appear one after another, and the auction hall grew ever more heated. Despite the staggering prices, cultivators competed fiercely. Opportunities like this were not easily found. Nearly a full day passed without Hanli making a single bid. Finally, the auctioneer announced, next, a 5th-tier immortal treasure, the Infernal Ghost Claw, forged from the claw of a great encompassment, infernal ghost beast of the infernal sea. Immortal region, refined with countless malicious souls, 18 types of ghost blood, and 36 kinds of ghost chi, then tempered in infernal flames for 1,000,000 years. It possesses immense yin ghost law power, along with terrifying penetrative and corrosive force. A massive black claw with 9 fingers emerged, shrouded in roiling black chi, instantly drawing countless gazes.